And we also note, as has been noted here today, the extremely disturbing and bloody executions of by Hamas of the people in the streets of Gaza, in broad daylight, on camera, for the world to see. This is further evidence that Hamas is unfit to rule the Gaza Strip, cannot be trusted with the safety of the people in Gaza for a moment longer. And likewise, frankly, many nations have condemned Israel, and those nations should be embarrassed for their silence and for their hypocrisy as Hamas slays its own people. And for the global community that has been protesting and demanding peace for the Palestinian people, for the people of Gaza, where is the outrage? Where is it over these executions we've seen in recent days? Hamas is not just attacking Israelis. It's not just terrorizing hostages underground. It's not just using bodies as psychological warfare on families. They are openly killing their own people for propaganda, in addition to the human shields that they've used over the past years. And candidly, shame on the world for its silence in the wake of these executions. And we also note, as has been noted here today, the extremely disturbing and bloody executions of Hamas.
Mr. President, the Israeli occupying regime has become a manifest and serious threat to regional and international peace and security. For over 2 years, the people in Gaza has endured an unprecedented and all-out war of extermination by this regime. During this time, Israel has engaged in systematic, indiscriminate, and disproportionate bombardment of innocent people. More than 68,000 innocent Palestinians have been killed. Thousands remain missing, and over 20,000 children have lost their lives. The entire infrastructure have been obliterated. Hospitals, schools, and water systems have been reduced to rubble. In fact, Gaza has been transformed into a landscape of devastation, a living testament of unbridled impunity. With the end of military operation in Gaza, the world is only beginning to grasp the full extent of the devastation left behind. Mr. President, Israeli aggression and criminal acts are not confined to Gaza. Islamic Republic of Iran has also been a direct target of Israeli aggression. Between 13 to 24 June, Israel launched unprovoked and large-scale attack against residential area hospitals and peaceful nuclear facilities under full IAEA safeguards. As a result of this indiscriminate and unlawful attack, 1,100 innocent civilians, including 132 women and 45 children, have lost their lives, and more than 5,700 others have been injured. Mr. President, the Islamic Republic of Iran supports every credible initiative aimed at ending the genocide in Gaza, ensuring the complete withdrawal of the occupying forces, establishing a permanent ceasefire, facilitating the unhindered delivery of humanitarian aid, and restoring the inalienable and fundamental right of the Palestinian people. The ending war against people in Gaza, however vital, does not absolve member states and competent international bodies of their shared legal, moral, and humanitarian obligation to ensure justice and accountability. The perpetrators and masterminds of war crimes, genocide, and crimes against humanity must be prosecuted, and the decades-long culture of impunity surrounding the Israeli regime must finally end. In conclusion, Mr. President, I categorically reject the unfounded allegation made by the United States representative. Iran's foreign policy is firmly rooted in the UN Charter and international law, respecting sovereignty, territorial integrity, non-interference, and good neighborliness. It is, in fact, the unlawful military presence and destabilizing action of the United States that have fueled the conflict and instability in our region. Iran has consistently shown its readiness for fair, genuine dialogue. Furthermore, the false narrative of Iranian proxies is a deliberate distraction from the true source of regional instability, the United States, and its unconditional support for its proxy in the region, the Israeli regime, enabling its ongoing aggression, atrocities, and occupation by repeatedly obstructing the Security Council Charter mandate. Washington has rendered itself complicit in these crimes and bears direct legal and moral responsibility for their continuation. I thank you.
Mr. President, we knew that the ceasefire was the only way forward, the way to save lives, the way to stop the massacres, the way to ensure families can reunite, Palestinian families and Israeli families. A ceasefire to stop the bloodshed, to release hostages and prisoners, to end an organized famine, to bring the horrors to an end. And finally, a ceasefire is here. Some are saying it is imperfect, it is volatile, it is transgressed, it is fragile, but it is here. There are reasons for skepticism. Some will say a skepticism informed by history, by experience, by precedent, by past pain, ache, and agony. But our role is not to be bystanders while things fall apart, or to have doubts, criticism, or objections and wait for time to prove us right. Our role is to collectively work to ensure the ceasefire holds, prevailing over those rooting for its collapse or working to make it fall apart. And we appreciate on that context the collective efforts to ensure this aim and the constant engagement of the mediators of Egypt, Qatar, and Turkey, and of course the United States at the highest level, to preserve this delicate ceasefire, to save lives that are too sacred. This is what the ceasefire is, an opportunity to save lives. What it will become relies on what all of us will do next. Mr. President, we do not forget those who awaited this day, but did not survive to witness it. Nor do we forget the survivors who welcome it scarred and starved and in mourning. We do not forget the journalists who did not live long enough to announce the ceasefire. We do not forget the doctors and the humanitarians killed for trying to save lives. We do not forget 20,000 Palestinian children killed by Israel, or their parents who have to walk the earth under their crushing shadow. We do not forget the orphaned, the maimed, the amputated, the tortured, and those still buried under the rubble. We do not forget Hind or Dunya, Reem and Khalid, Anas and Yusuf and Jubran and Eve and Salam and Siwar and Selena, Mahmoud, Adam, and many, many others. I've said before, I'll say it again, the most unjust expectation, that one that falls only on Israelis, the people of the region and the world. And here let me quote a very important historical document, the US Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We cannot formulate it any better. We are endowed by the same Creator with these same unalienable rights. Peace cannot come from the denial of these rights. It comes from their fulfillment. We are not less worthy of freedom, not less entitled to security, not less able to contribute to shared prosperity. Enough dispossession, enough displacement, enough death, enough despair. In Gaza, but also in the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, where tens of thousands have been displaced, many have been killed, and where many communities are under constant attack. What do we tell Afaf Abu Aliya, a 55-year-old woman, mother of 5, knocked unconscious with a club by an Israeli settler as she was harvesting olives in Tormos Aya, and beaten again while she lied unconscious on the ground? Israeli settlers' attacks have intensified. You have all condemned them without exception, but this condemnation does not protect our people from these repeated attacks. These extremist settlers, together with occupation forces, spread fear and violence in the hope to intimidate and displace and push annexation in all directions. Till when? People killed and maimed and arbitrarily detained, homes demolished, settlements built, land expropriated, communities uprooted. Till when? If after a century of conflict and dispossession and displacement and wars and occupation and colonization and blockade and walls, if after the 7th of October, if after genocide in Gaza, we are not yet convinced that it is time for peace, that we owe future generations peace, what will ever convince us? Mr. President, over the course of the last few weeks, the entire world rallied around clear objectives, following unbelievable outrage across the globe. From the Global Alliance, launched by Saudi Arabia, the EU, and Norway, to the Madrid Group, to the Hague Group, to those who recognize the state of Palestine, and among those around the table, the last among them to have joined France and the UK, that I want to acknowledge here, to Algeria and the members of this council, all working for an end to the horrors and moving towards peace. And the International Peace Conference, co-chaired by Saudi Arabia and France, which demonstrated true leadership at its helm, and which endorsed the New York Declaration, a landmark document that charts a path forward to peace. The world mobilized for an independent and sovereign Palestinian state, for the two-state solution. They mobilized for peace. Palestine is committed to peace. It is committed to the full implementation of the New York Declaration, which charts a clear and irreversible path to freedom, peace, and regional integration. It will do its part, and it continues to commit to you here, once again, we will uphold our obligations. We are implementing our commitments, and we expect others to do their part and to uphold their obligations. Mr. President, we and many others around the world welcome the efforts of President Trump for peace and pledge to work with the US administration and with regional and international partners to move from a ceasefire to just and lasting peace. As was stated by the United States, it is for Palestinians to govern themselves. There is no substitute to Palestinian self-determination. There is a critical role for regional and international actors and mechanisms in support of Palestinian governance and independent statehood, and not as a substitute to them. We need to work together to ensure success. The task is monumental, but it is worth it. It requires collective and coordinated efforts. There were efforts and plans before, but maybe there was never before such momentum for peace, stemming from horrors the region witnessed the last 2 years. Just peace will change the face of the region and the fate of its peoples. The independence of the State of Palestine and the implementation of the two-state solution will pave the way for regional integration, a prospect many thought and still think impossible, but that is within grasp if we collectively decide to rid the region of wars and occupation and finally choose shared peace, shared security, and shared prosperity. It is time to end this conflict once and for all, so people never experience such pain and loss again, and all peoples can live in peace and security. These last few days, Mr. President, we saw families reunite, finally. Some with their loved ones still alive, able finally to embrace them, and some whose bodies were returned to be buried and to be mourned. There are still families waiting for their loved ones. We keep them in our minds. As the world tracked the release of 20 Israeli hostages, as it should, thousands of Palestinian prisoners were being released with undeniable evidence of the ill and degrading treatment they were subjected to. as the world followed the search for the bodies of 28 Israeli hostages, it must not forget that under the same rubble, you have the bodies of thousands upon thousands of bodies of Palestinians. This should be a moment to remind us all of our shared humanity, of the suffering future generation can and must be spared. This should not happen any longer. Regardless what camp you belong to, what cause you defend, what right you proclaim, no one should ever justify harming civilians, abducting them, torturing them, killing them. No one should ever justify holding remains, sometimes for years and decades, and depriving families from their ability to offer them dignified burial. Summary execution are never acceptable, regardless who commits them. No one should explain that there is any title or any right that can justify atrocities. No one, never, ever, under any circumstances. Mr. President, Gaza is an integral part of Palestine. Families in Gaza suffered more than enough. They have no homes to return to, no schools, no hospitals. Bombardments cannot continue taunting and haunting them. Aid cannot continue to be weaponized, as was said by the International Court of Justice yesterday. The ceasefire must be upheld. There is no other choice. Reconstruction must proceed, and we support all efforts in this regard and look forward to the conference in Cairo towards that aim. And here, allow me to thank the mediators for their relentless efforts that led to the Sharm el-Sheikh agreement. Egypt, which endured smearing campaigns and attacks. Qatar, whose territory was struck by Israel as it was mediating. Turkey, which joined these mediation efforts. And the United States. And let us speak plainly. The United States is a superpower. And as such, it has always a choice to fuel the fire or to help cease the fire. In this case, President Trump used all his weight to achieve a ceasefire agreement that saves lives and that releases the hostages. We all listened to the chants on Hostages Square in Tel Aviv. They know there would be no agreement without President Trump. And the region and the world mobilized around his effort as they understand that this is a chance for life, for freedom, and for peace. They understand he alone can save Israel from itself and from the temptation of brutal and indiscriminate force and annexation that has isolated it around the world. The 2 votes in the Knesset yesterday demonstrate that Israel has yet to renounce this path, other policies and other measures and other statements as well. But we appreciate the clear message from the Trump administration against any push for annexation. We will work with President Trump, with regional and international partners, to transform a fragile and volatile ceasefire into just and lasting peace, with Palestinian agency and Palestinian liberation as our goal, with mutual recognition and peaceful coexistence as cornerstones. What we need is not a pause in the violence and injustice, but an end to them. Violence is an impasse. It must not be fueled nor tolerated. It must be stopped. And we will not relent in our rejection of violence against all civilians. Likewise, injustice must never be justified or shielded. It must be brought to an end. Palestine is committed to peace. We are the ones who need it most, and peace needs to be a shared objective to become a shared reality. We must seize this opportunity to end the suffering and work for freedom and peace, regardless of how great the challenges are. Help us demonstrate to our people that there is a peaceful path to freedom and to dignified life. The efforts to undermine the Palestinian Authority and its ability to perform its duties despite its full-fledged commitment to peace that has been put to test over the course of the last 2 years in unbelievable manners, aims at preventing our independence and our statehood. If there are requirements placed on the Palestinian Authority, it must be empowered to fulfill them. And Israel has also obligations that need to be monitored and implemented. We will not shy away from our obligations and from our commitments. We owe to our people to fulfill them, leading them to a path of liberation and peace. A new generation can wake up to a very different region where no one is killed, no one is abducted, no one is tortured, where cooperation and coexistence replace occupation and conflict, where shared security replaces perpetual war, where shared prosperity replaces pillage and devastation. Isn't that worth striving for? We owe it to those who were killed. We owe it to those who survived. We owe it to future generations. It is time for peace.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I would like to thank Deputy Special Coordinator for his briefing. Mr. President, today we gather at a historic moment for our region. Israel has achieved what many thought impossible. All of our living hostages are home. The remains of 15 fallen hostages have been recovered and given the dignity of a proper burial. Hamas has been forced to accept a deal it rejected from the very beginning, to return the hostages and to disarm. This achievement was not born of chance, but of a combination of courage and conviction. History will remember that in the wake of the worst massacre of our people since the Holocaust, that Israel kept its promise to defend our people, to bring our hostages home, and to eliminate future threats to our security. Despite the pressure of many members of this very council, despite the political theater, the condemnations, and the hypocrisy, Israel stood firm. We did not waver. We prevailed. But our struggle is not over. There can be no peace, no future, and no rebuilding of Gaza while terror still remains. 13 fallen hostages remain in Hamas's hands. We will bring them home and give them the dignity they deserve. The world must keep the pressure where it belongs, on Hamas, to return the hostages, to lay down its weapons, and to honor the peace plan it signed. Mr. President, we embraced the return of our hostages. Our nation has been swept by emotion, joy and relief, but also deep pain and grief. We have seen in the last few weeks mothers embracing sons, fathers reunited with their children, young couples holding each other again. In every home, in every community, Israel has felt the weight of what was lost and the miracle of return. Families reunited, lives once trapped in darkness have seen light again. But we cannot forget what they endured: starved, beaten, shackled, deprived of food, water, and light, forced to dig their own graves, humiliated, and yet they survived. They held onto their humanity even in the face of evil. As we welcome home the living, we also mourn the fallen who have now returned to us for proper burial. They remind the world that Hamas's cruelty knows no borders, no faith, no mercy. To the families of the fallen hostages and to all who still wait for the return of their loved ones from Gaza, we say, Israel has not forgotten them. We will do whatever it takes to bring them home, all of them. Mr. President, make no mistake, Hamas has already violated the ceasefire. They promised to return the bodies of our fallen within 72 hours. Yet still today, more than 300 hours after the ceasefire began, 13 fallen hostages remain in captivity. Hamas lied at the negotiating table, and they lied still to us, to the negotiators, and to the entire world. They know exactly, and we know that they know, where our fallen are. They simply refuse to act. This is not a matter of logistics. It is a calculated cruelty, psychological warfare designed to inflict pain and to buy time. Let me be clear. Our fallen hostages will be brought home by diplomacy, if possible, by other means, if necessary. It should come as no surprise that the same hands that refuse to return our dead are the ones that still pull the trigger. Just 9 days into the ceasefire, Hamas terrorists opened fire in an IDF-controlled area, killing 2 Israeli soldiers and seriously injuring many others. These are not allegations, they are facts. Yet, as Hamas violates the ceasefire, too many look away. There is no clearer example than the outrageous and false moral equivalence drawn in recent weeks, and I'm sure we will hear it today. We have heard commentators, diplomats, even world leaders equate the release of innocent hostages with the release of convicted terrorists. They speak as if these two acts were the same, as if those civilians who were kidnapped at gunpoints from their homes and held in tunnels could ever be compared with those who planted bombs on buses and slaughtered innocent lives. To bring our people home, Israel made choices no country should ever have to make. We released those jailed for murder, terror, and kidnapping. Let me give you a few examples from those who were released. Imad Kawasme, he planted a bomb on a Beersheba bus and killed 16 innocent people. Muhammad Aref Sama, who helped murder 23 civilians in Jerusalem, and many more. Yet some still try to blur the line between victims and their attackers. Let me be clear, hostages are not criminals. There can be no moral equivalence, none. In Israel, families cried with joy as loved ones came home after years in darkness. In Gaza, crowds celebrated murderers returning from prison. That is the difference between a nation that values life and a terror movement that glorifies death. Israel acted not from weakness, but from strength, to save lives and to advance peace. But peace demands more than promises. It demands disarmament. Many of you are already picturing Gaza's future. You have seen the plans, the ideas, hotels rising on the coast, schools filled with children, parks and public squares. Now I could hand each of you a pair of virtual reality goggles and show you the videos and the ideas that are circulated around about the future of Gaza. But before we get lost in virtual reality, let's remove the goggles and look at what is really happening today. Because before classrooms open or a single home is built, one truth must be faced. Hamas must go. Hamas must disarm. All the plans, the pledges, the visions, the videos, they are all virtual reality until terror ends. Members of this council, let me show you what reality looks like today in Gaza. This image was taken in the Sabra neighborhood in Gaza City on the 15th of October, just after the ceasefire began. Hamas gunmen emerged from their tunnels, clean uniforms, full stomachs, armed and organized, almost immediately they turned their guns on their own people. They attacked men, women, and children, hunted rivals, and carried out public executions. No evidence, no trial, just terror. And from the UN, silence. No condemnation, no accountability, no emergency session. That silence is dangerous. It emboldens Hamas. They walk the same path as ISIS, with the same brutality and the same contempt for human life. How can there be a future for Gaza while its people still live under fear? That is why disarmament is not only a security demand, it is a moral duty. Mr. President, peace cannot coexist with terror. The peace plan before us is an opportunity. But opportunity alone is not enough. We must act now to ensure Hamas is disarmed, not only with statements, with action, with pressure, with resolve. Hamas still sits on a deadly stockpile: assault and sniper rifles, RPGs, rocket launchers, anti-tank missiles like the Cornet. Beneath Gaza, their factories hum, their tunnels run deep. Disarmament means more than words. It means those weapons surrendered, the tunnels sealed, the factories shut down. It means dismantling Hamas's entire war machine, every command post, every weapons line, every tunnel. True disarmament strips Hamas of power itself, its ability to plan, to arm, to strike. Members of this Council, blueprints and promises of reconstruction will not stop bullets. Only real disarmament will. Now is the moment to turn words into pressure and hopefully pressure into peace. Last week, the Jewish people celebrated Simchat Torah, a holiday that marks the conclusion of the annual reading cycle of our Bible, the Torah, and the beginning of a new cycle. Every year we read the same chapters. As we open the first chapter, Bereshit, the book of Genesis, we return to the moment creation began, and I quote, "And God saw the light, that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness." Before creation came order. Before life began, chaos had to hand. God separated light from darkness, bringing clarity, structure, and peace. So it must be now. Before Gaza can be rebuilt, terror must be removed. Before peace can begin, Hamas must lay down its weapons. Israel is ready to do its part and move forward. But peace cannot live alongside terror. Every day, Hamas refuses to disarm. They drag Gaza deeper into darkness. The time for excuses is over. Hamas must disarm now, fully and completely, so that light, not darkness, shape our future. Thank you, Mr. President.
Colleagues, President Trump's 20-point plan for peace offers a historic opportunity. His diplomacy brought the ceasefire in Gaza with support from around the world. It brought home 20 living hostages who spent 738 days held captive in a living hell. It offers hope for the people of Gaza. It offers hope for the Middle East to turn the page on a millennia of violence and to usher in a new age of peace and prosperity. Under President Trump's leadership, the United States has ended 8 conflicts across the globe over the course of just 8 months. And with the help of our friends in Qatar and Egypt and Turkey and the region, this most recent success may prove to be the greatest opening of them all. This historic success is cause for celebration. It's cause for determination, but it cannot be cause for complacency. As President Trump has said, the job is not done. And in that vein, Hamas must immediately return the bodies of the 13 remaining hostages, including the bodies of American citizens Itaikin and Omer Nutra, as promised under the agreement. Their families, colleagues, their families deserve dignity. And Hamas must likewise follow through on its commitment to disarm. The president is not playing games here. And simply put, Hamas is finished in Gaza and does not have a future there. And if they do not follow through, they are in violation of the ceasefire and will face consequences, severe consequences. The future of Gaza can be one of peace and prosperity. And we also note, as has been noted here today, the extremely disturbing and bloody executions of by Hamas of the people in the streets of Gaza, in broad daylight, on camera, for the world to see. This is further evidence that Hamas is unfit to rule the Gaza Strip, cannot be trusted with the safety of the people in Gaza for a moment longer. And likewise, frankly, many nations have condemned Israel, and those nations should be embarrassed for their silence and for their hypocrisy as Hamas slays its own people. And for the global community that has been protesting and demanding peace for the Palestinian people, for the people of Gaza, where is the outrage? Where is it over these executions we've seen in recent days? Hamas is not just attacking Israelis. It's not just terrorizing hostages underground. It's not just using bodies as psychological warfare on families. They are openly killing their own people for propaganda, in addition to the human shields that they've used over the past years. And candidly, shame on the world for its silence in the wake of these executions. Well, President Trump has not been silent. He has clearly said Hamas terrorists must immediately cease these killings or face their own elimination. So when Hamas complies with the deal, the rebuilding of Gaza will be a major regional and global event. The peace agreement has already resulted in a dramatic increase in the flow of humanitarian aid to the people there, and we will continue to work to deliver aid to scale and meet Gaza's humanitarian needs, rehabilitating its infrastructure, including its hospitals, its roads, its bakeries, its water, its electricity, its sewage systems. We will continue to work with our international partners, with the United Nations, with everyone around the world to scale up the response and deliver aid to the civilians in need. But unfortunately, in the midst of this important work, as President Trump, as Vice President Vance, as Secretary Rubio and the team work tirelessly to bring peace to the region, the ICJ just issued a nakedly political, but fortunately non-binding, advisory opinion, unfairly bashing Israel and giving UNRWA a free pass for its deep entanglement with Hamas's terrorism. Colleagues, President Trump's peace agreement heralds more than the end of the war in Gaza. With God's help, it will mark the beginning of a strong, stable, and prosperous region, united in rejecting the path of violence, hatred, and terror. But in support of that vision, more broadly, the international community must urge the Iranian regime to give up on its false hope of revolution and forgo its ambitions on its neighbors, to stop meddling in the politics of other countries in the region, and to instead engage in direct and good faith dialogue with the United States for the benefit of the Iranian people and the security of the region. Because of tough action on Iranian proxies, we are seeing historic opportunity in Lebanon, in Syria, in Iraq, and across the region. And in this spirit, the United States supports and has supported the reimposition of UN snapback sanctions on the Iranian regime. The regime will continue to face consequences as long as it does not leave its path of destruction. Colleagues, we must continue to press Iran to do what it's right, to do what's right for its people, and what's best for international peace and regional security. With President Trump's plan, we are closer than ever to realizing the Middle East that generations have dreamt of. A region of peace, prosperity, harmony, opportunity, innovation, achievement. The more we are talking about infrastructure, about rail, about data centers, about AI, the less we will be talking about these historic animosities. And along those lines, we look forward to more countries in the region joining the Abraham Accords. We look forward to a future that can realize this dream. Thank you, colleagues.
It's 2025. America's debt is over $37 trillion, and the dollar just had its worst crash since 1973. That puts your savings and your family's future at risk. That's why we trust Alpha Omega Gold, a company that stands unapologetically with Israel and supports Stand Tall Israel. Visit ao.gold/stand to claim your free precious metals wayfinder guide or call 1-855-426-4653 today. Protect your future before it's too late.